It was the typical record scratch moment where everyone stopped and looked at me. Daryl was the name of the friend who had just died. When you're lying in bed at night, do you ever randomly remember some relatively minor social missteps or poorly chosen words you did or said years earlier? And then beat yourself up over it even though it really wasn't a big deal? If so, what happened? In 7th grade, a cute girl asked me to sit next to her. I said my mom won't let me sit next to girls. My mom said no such thing. If you said cute girls you'd have been a total baller. So close. That level of smoothness eludes me to this day. I was in 5th grade or so and I was sitting in class with a couple classmates. We were talking about Weird Al songs we liked. This one girl asked, "Have you heard some Weird Al song?" And I followed with, "Have you ever heard I'm So Sick of You?" Which I guess they hadn't heard because she looked immediately down at the desk, sort of somber, and the dude did a little ho-ho-oo as if I did a nice burn. I guess they thought I was telling this girl I was so sick of her. I had no clue at the time though, so I just let it ride. Still feel bad about that one. I accidentally mixed up an inside joke with the wrong friend group with disastrous results. Friend group number 1, the joke was when someone calls and asks who's all there we would add Daryl to the list of names. Daryl wasn't a real person. The joke wasn't really funny, and made no sense out of context, but I guess that's why it was an inside joke. Friend group number 2, I was hanging out playing some drinking games with a bunch of people that I hadn't hung out with in a while. It was a kind of get-together to remember a friend that they had who had recently died in a car accident. I didn't know him that well, but I was always down to party. Anyway, the phone rings, and the person who answered started listing off names. Sorting my cards for another round of presidents and assholes, I offhandedly said, "Hey, and Daryl." It was the typical record scratch moment where everyone stopped and looked at me. Daryl was the name of the friend who had just died. This happened in 2002 and I still think about it all the time. Daryl was there in spirit and appreciated that you, at least, remembered he was there. I'm sure that's exactly what Op thinks to say all these years later, but in all actuality he just sat there and stewed in the embarrassment of the moment. Oh man, I have a mixed up inside joke scenario. It wasn't me, it was my neighbor. My neighbor is morbidly obese and my mom is Korean, and they joke with each other about it. My neighbor makes racist comments to my mom, she makes fun of my neighbor's weight. It's just part of their friendship. They often did it in public too, but it was always obvious when they were standing next to each other that it was inside joke. At one point my neighbor was out with her husband, they're both white. She was at a checkout counter when she blithely remarked about all the damn Koreans taking over the region. The checkout lady just stares at her. Then the husband leaned over and said, "It's not as funny when Dragon Meme's mom isn't standing next to you." Cue my horrified neighbor desperately trying to explain that she wasn't a racist, that it's an inside joke. My friend is Korean. Which of course just made her look worse. My mom lost it when she heard the story. When I was in 5th grade, our teacher said a joke in front of the class and everyone laughed, including myself. After the laughter died down, a girl looked up at me and said, "You have a really damn disgusting laugh, ew." I became so self-conscious about laughter since that specific day, and after years I have trouble actually laughing. My brain kinda made it a habit to just smile or slightly chuckle at something, even if it is really funny. Edit, the girl's last name, when translated from my native language to English, is Cock. Have a nice day. Junior prom, I blurted out during dinner to my date, "I'm so bored," and I have no idea why it came out of my mouth. I'm pretty well mannered and quiet. I forget how I tried to play it off, but I felt so bad. I was sitting in a small group of friends in school, and my crush, literally the love of my life at that point, admitted she liked me. It was the happiest moment of my entire life. So naturally I said ew in front of everyone. This was 2nd grade and I still think about it weekly. My friend in 2nd grade made fun of me for liking a girl. He is now married to said girl. Edit, we had to send away to NASA to tabulate the number of people who said some form of he was playing the long game. I'll keep you guys posted. Good. Now he has cooties. Who's laughing now, asshole? I went through a phase where I scolded people for reading Harry Potter because my parents told me it was evil. Lots of awkward situations because of that. Oof. They really set you up for failure on that one. For most of my education, I went to public school, and like most kids, I was socially awkward. For high school, I received an academic scholarship to a private Catholic school. It was a really big deal for my family. I didn't know anyone at the new school. Between an odd combination of academics, sports and the tail end of puberty, I became very popular in this new school. I wasn't used to the attention, and it definitely got to my teenage head. Nearly all of my social circles became around the new school and not with my old local friends. I'm in my junior year. I head to a McDonald's for lunch with a few friends from the new school. Working the counter, I see a girl who I used to go to public school with that I used to have a crush on. She just lit up when she saw me. She was so excited, and I was a crappy teenager and I just ignored her. I pretended I didn't recognize her. She looked so deflated when I didn't acknowledge her. Note, this was the 90s. My family moved a few times after that. I settled down in a different part of the country after university. I never made it back to that town. I've relived that asshole moment for years now. Fast forward to one of those nights when I relive that moment, and I decide to look her up on Facebook to apologize. I find out she died 10 years ago in an auto accident. Since I found out her fate, I feel even more awful about that moment. When I was 11, it was my first day at a new school and all the other students were also new. The maths teacher started our first class by asking each of us about our education background, what school we came from, what they taught in our last year's maths class, etc. Just trying to get a general idea of what kind of students he was dealing with. Thing is, I was so nervous that I spaced out for a bit and got lost in my overthinking mind, so I didn't hear the teacher's questions to my classmates. When it got to my turn, the teacher just said, "Now tell me about you," assuming I understood what kind of information he was expecting. I just went straight into a monologue that started with, "So I was born in the south zone of the city, but my mom decided to move to our current neighborhood a few months after divorcing my dad," and went on and on, giving some very specific details about my short life. Everyone had a really confused look on their faces, and as soon as I realized the teacher was also completely lost, I stopped talking and went instantly red. The teacher then said, "That's all really great, but I was only interested in what happened last year, not the last 10, and everyone started laughing. Next day nobody remembered it anymore, but 12 years later it still comes to mind in pretty random moments. Freshman year of high school. It was one of those days before school starts and you meet your teacher and your parents are there. My teacher was handing me a piece of paper and I didn't see the paper, so I shook his hand. He said, "Oh," and my mom said, And I panicked and said I just wanted to be polite. So I still want to die when I think of that. Bruh, I can't even begin to pinpoint one event. I guess one thing is, when I was 11, I asked my teacher if I could go to the bathroom 3 times during class and told me no. And well, sure enough, I couldn't hold it any longer and there's bullying for the next 6 months. Literally shakes me in bed about how I have never felt that low before. Somehow I managed to live through it though, lol. We all got flaws. Mine is a bladder that urinates prematurely. Like and subscribe for more r/ask Reddit videos.